Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about splines and circles. Splines and circles are commonly used, especially circles, but splines are also very useful. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to use them, and we're going to do some some exercises as well. So let's create a 2D sketch. Select XY plane, drag it to the left bottom corner, and on the top side, line is going to be the default option. But if you use the drop-down menu, you will see the spline control vertex method, spline interpolation method. Again, if you keep your mouse on it, it will show you a preview of that. And equation curve and bridge curve are not commonly used, but we will talk about them in the following videos. In this video, we will focus on splines. So let's select control vertex option. And when the control vertex spline is active, let's select the midpoint as our reference point. So now it looks like we are creating a normal line, but when we click on the screen, it places a reference point and it continues to create a spline. Now let's click again, and that's our second point. Let's click the third time, and that's our end point, and click OK. Now the spline is created. The first point is constraint to the origin point, so that's why it's not moving. But the end point is there's no constraint there, so we can move it around. And also now we can use these the reference points to manipulate the spline. We can drag it up, we can drag it this one down, and manipulate the spline. Let's undo all of this and look at the other spline option. Instead of choosing the control vertex, now we can choose interpolation spline. The only difference is interpolation spline reference points are on the spline, not around the spline. So now if we click on the origin point and click again, notice that the reference point is on the spline. Now we can use these reference points which are on the spline to manipulate the spline. Sometimes the CAD users create the spline and they don't want to recreate the spline when they realize that they need more reference points. In that case, you can just click on the line, right click, and select Insert Point. When you do that, it's going to allow you to manually add reference points. Now you can use those reference points to also manipulate the spline. Let's delete this sketch and create a dummy 3D object. Let's use 2-point center rectangle. Use the origin point to create it and create a rectangle. We're not going to dimension it right now. Let's finish sketch, extrude. Let's say we want this to be 20 millimeter extrusion. Now let's select new sketch and select this face to create our sketch on. Let's right click and select project geometry. Now it is going to recognize the center point and the edges of that geometry. Now we can take advantage of that. Let's select Control Vertex and select the midpoint of the vertical line on the left. Now notice that it shows me that green dot, which means that it is the midpoint. And let's select that and start creating our spline. Let's come to this section here and place a reference point. Maybe here, place another reference point, go up, place another reference point, and end on this edge. Now we can use these reference points to kind of manipulate the spline. Let's make it look like this. Maybe to drag it down a little bit more. And then finish 2D sketch. And then select Extrude again and select this top section, but this time with the Cut option in the Extrude menu. And let's select through all so it cuts everything on its path. Now we just created this shape using the spline. This kind of looks like a poolside chair or something like that. But we can use splines like that. So now let's delete all these extrusions and go back to the beginning point. Now let's create a sketch again, select XY plane, and now let's look at circles. Circles are also available next to rectangles, arcs, splines, lines. You can also select a circle. If you click on the drop-down menu, you will see the tangent circle, you will see ellipse, and in the future we will use these options, but the most commonly used option is the circle, center point circle. Let's click on that, and if we select the origin point, we can create a circle. Let's undo that and do it again. Select circle, click on the midpoint, and we can assign a diameter as we are creating it. Let's say it's 25 millimeter circle. Notice that the color is black now, which means that it is fully defined because it's got a midpoint and it's got a diameter. So I cannot move the circle around. But if I create a separate circle on the right hand side, now the circle moves around. And it doesn't have a dimension, so it can get smaller or larger if I drag it. I can assign a diameter by clicking on dimensions, and I can do 20 millimeters. Now it's not going to get smaller or larger, but it can move around in the space. So these are the circles and splines, but do a quick exercise to use both of them. Let's finish the sketch and then let's delete the sketch. Now let's start a 2D sketch again and select XY plane, and let's create a circle using the origin point. Let's say the circle is 6 millimeter in diameter. And let's create another circle in the middle. Let's say this one is 4 millimeter in diameter. So now let's finish this sketch. We talked about the origin planes in the previous videos. Let's use the YZ plane, which is perpendicular to the circle we created. Let's use the YZ plane to create another sketch. Now we're looking at the circle from the side, so that's why it looks like a straight line. So now let's say we are going to select spline control vertex using the midpoint of the circle. Let's create maybe our first line looks like this, second line looks like that. Create a third line here, maybe give it a big turn here, go up and finish it. So right now we have a circle, and now we have also a spline that use the control vertex option. I know we did not cover the sweep option. We will talk about that in the future, but just for this exercise, we will use the sweep option to create a hose. Now the sweep option is going to ask for a profile. Let's select the profile between the circles. And then for the curve, let's select the spline we created. Now we just created a hose. Especially in machine design, when you have to create pneumatic lines or vacuum lines, splines are used very commonly. And of course, the circles, we use splines with circles a lot, and circles also in so many different designs. We use circles just like rectangles and lines, we use them frequently. So it is important to understand them. And in the following videos, we will do some real-time exercises to understand the sketch concepts like rectangles, lines, splines, arcs, and circles. Thank you.